I don't.
podcast.
Oh, now I hear you. Hi.
Oh, okay.
Take it again from the top.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Zzzax of Live podcast, a Marvel podcast from Laughing Place. I'm Mike Mack. That's Kyle Burbank. I don't know if any of the intro went down the way it was supposed to. Everything seemed to be glitching on my end there. So sorry about that. For those of you listening to the audio, everything was perfect. We'll fix it in post. So we're back to discuss the penultimate episode of this second season of Loki. We're gonna break down. We actually have some Marvel news to discuss, some fairly big Marvel news from the past week. So
I probably should have watched the thing that dropped, but I've been busy all morning.
There was a lot because there was some stuff yesterday. I don't know. I think days all just bleed together now. So I have no idea. But yeah, lots of Marvel news to catch up on. We're going to break down that episode of Loki. We are going to have a fun draft with a special Laughing Place guest joining us a little bit later.
Can I complain about something real quick?
Yeah, please do.
So we talked about Marvel news. We're going to get to be Marvel news in a second, but I found out that sometimes you can get clickbaited by your own boss. Sometimes when things pop up and it says Moon Knight trailer, I'm like, what? And then it's about comics.
It was about
Not
comics.
that I don't love comics, but
I try to be as careful as I possibly can with all of our comics news that we report on at Laughing Place. I try to always make sure the headline says something like new comic series or something like that. So I try to avoid that clickbait element that you're talking about. But yeah, Marvel does do that themselves. They'll just drop a new Moon Knight trailer. And then you realize it is about the comic series. Are you home now? It looks like you're home again.
I am home. What if I now have two homes because I'm
right.
paying rent on this place and we just closed on a house yesterday. So now I have 2 months to move from this place to that place.
Yeah, congratulations about that. I don't know if we said that on the podcast at all yet, but yeah.
I don't think so because we were waiting until it was actually like done.
Official, yeah. Yeah, good. So we don't have to start our episodes every week with where in the world is Kyle Burbank, having been Hong Kong, Cleveland, somewhere around Cleveland.
There was a Florida in there because I was at your
literally right here. So yeah, we're get back to some normalcy just in time for me to ruin it next week. Because I'll get this programming note out of the way at the top. We'll mention it again at the end too as a reminder, but next week we won't have our normal Friday podcast. We will probably be doing it the following Tuesday, I think, as of right now. Not sure just yet, but we will break down the season finale of Loki next week, as well as the Marvels, which hits theaters next Friday. You have your tickets for the Marvels already, right?
So I have my tickets for the Marvels on Thursday night, but ahead of that, Becca is flying to Los Angeles to see it next week. A couple days.
Very cool, yeah.
With Becca will have our review this time because the strike is still going on. So that's
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that makes sense. That actually just explained a whole bunch of things in my head that we can talk about later. But Becca will have our review of the Marvels on laughingplace.com. I don't know when that's allowed to go up, but
even if I knew, I don't know if I'd be allowed to say when.
That's fair. Yeah. We'll have a review of the Marvels. So we'll like I said, probably the following Tuesday, we'll be back to break all the Marvel stuff down. But let's get into that Marvel news from the past weeks. Like I said, there's actually quite a bit of it to discuss. So a big chunk of it comes from a long Variety article that came out yesterday. And I said this yesterday on our Laughing Place live stream, but I want to mention it again. I want to give Variety some credit because a lot of the reporting around Marvel has just been sort of everything is negative and nothing's going right for Marvel and everybody has superhero fatigue. And the focus of this article was sort of that too, but they did kind of also explain things, give reasoning behind specific examples and also put a positive twist on things at the end too. So just giving them some credit for that. The big story, in my opinion, there were two. It was sort of a 1A, 1B situation, but I think the big one for the real hardcore Marvel fans is that, during the annual Marvel Studios retreat in Palm Springs, Kevin Feige and the rest of whoever is in attendance for that.
The brain trust.
The brain trust, yeah, we can call it the supreme intelligence, I think is what we'll go with. They kicked around the idea of replacing Kang in the multiverse saga as sort of the primary antagonist. And obviously there's the Jonathan Majors legal troubles that he is dealing with. And so there's got to be a solution to that one way or another in the future for Marvel. So they threw out the idea, reportedly, we don't know, we weren't in the room, but reportedly the idea was that Doctor Doom would take over as the new villain of the multiverse saga. What are your thoughts on that? I'm curious to get a different opinion.
I mean, I'd be curious to know how they did it. I don't know a lot about Doctor Doom. I don't think I've seen either of the Fantastic Four or read anything, but I know that he's a favorite. I know that he has a free fall tower.
Yes, that's true. He does have Doctor Doom's Fear Fall at Islands of Adventure at Universal.
But no, yeah, an interesting idea to, I mean, even just story wise, if they had something where they were building up this big bad and then it gets squashed and somebody else takes over, just from a stakes sort of perspective, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I love Doctor Doom. He's one of my favorite characters. I think we've talked about him on the podcast for various reasons before, but I actually, as much as I want to see Doctor Doom in the MCU, and I'm sure we will at some point, and I can't wait for it, but I would prefer them to finish out the Kang story rather than replace him and jump to somebody else. Not that I think Marvel would just kind of cut the story and jump to something completely different, but I would like to see Kang get his justice, get what he deserves as a character. Whether that's recasting the role, which I think is fairly easy to do. Marvel's recasted roles in the past, and with now the multiverse and different timelines and all of that, like it seems like it would be, at least as far as story goes, it would be fairly easy to do. Now recasting based on the talents of the actor might be a little bit more difficult because Jonathan Majors has been fantastic in this role. But there's plenty of talent out there to do that. And I would think that would be Marvel's first move, and guess that they just haven't really been able to do anything because of that ongoing strike, probably not getting a whole lot of negotiating going on with different actors. Yeah. But yeah, that would be my hope. That being said, I can't wait for Doctor Doom to eventually be involved. And he is has a major role in the Secret Wars story arc in the 2015 comic that will be adapted for the upcoming Avengers movie. Of course, we have Avengers Kang Dynasty first. You probably need Kang for that one. And then I would guess Doctor Doom could have a role in Avengers Secret Wars after that. But we'll see. We'll see what they do. I thought it was just interesting that's a name that came up, and that was an idea that was thrown out there.
And this is one of those times where when we need a featured image and there's nothing, your knowledge of comic history is great because you can go find a panel that has both of them in one frame to use.
Which is fairly easy because Kang and Doctor Doom have crossed paths quite a bit in the comics. There's actually even a theory at one point that Doctor Doom is Kang. So it's a really interesting dynamic between those two characters.
Well, there you go. I think you just explained how they would replace.
Yeah, I think that is how the angle they would take if they were to go with Doctor Doom. But we'll see. We'll see what they do. The other, the 1A to the 1B to the 1A here was Marvel is considering, or was in talks, is I think how Variety said it, which I thought was interesting, to bring back some of the original Avengers. That would mean Robert Downey Jr. and Scarlett Johansson. Those are the two names they threw out there. I thought it was interesting that they did not explicitly say Chris Evans. To me, he's always been top of the list for I think he's going to come back at least for a spot in the future. And I still think he would. But it's just interesting that they specifically said Robert Downey Jr. and Scarlett Johansson. You might know better than me right now, too. Where have we left off with Scarlett Johansson's relationship with Disney? Is that even on the table at this point?
Yeah, I mean, she was supposed to, I don't know where the movie stands, but she was supposed to be producing Tower of Terror. It seemed all was forgiven. The guy in charge of that whole thing, sort of, arguably is gone. So it seems like it'd be okay. And
Okay.
I assume this would be like a multiverse sort of a thing. I don't know. I'm going to reserve judgment. Like my initial knee jerk is like, oh no, that's stupid. Don't do that. Cause like let a death stick for once.
Mhm.
Um, but you know, if you just are doing like small little story things, like we'll see with Wolverine, like in Deadpool 3, we'll see how they deal with that. I don't know. I think yeah, I don't think it's something that you can just base right off of the headline. I think it's gonna be how they, if they were to do that, how they did it. And yeah, I mean, even then, there is still the thing, like you know, Robert Downey Jr. said, like I, it was even hard for him to get that reshot where he says, "I am Iron Man," because he's already moved on. He's already
Right.
like said goodbye to the character, so to have to come back and reprise it for even just one little shot is I don't know if taxing is the right word, but just kind of strange for him. So to come back and do something that is the character but might not be that character, it could be exciting for them, but it could also be like, you know, I already put that to bed sort of thing. So I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, and the real
Oh,
world
money.
side, yeah, exactly. The real world side of things is to me the only potential hang up on this happening. I think that there's ways for them to do this within the narrative. Jump to whatever year Avengers Secret Wars ends up coming out, and you see Sam Wilson, getting beaten up by Doctor Doom. Then all of a sudden, Loki opens up a time door, and you hear "On Your Left," and Chris Evans, Steve Rogers walks out. That's going to just set the crowd into a frenzy the same way Endgame did. So there's definitely ways that they could make it
I mean,
feel, and I do
if
think it would be just that sort of moment. It's not going to be like
Mhm.
Chris Evans returns and we have Steve Rogers back forever in the MCU. It's going to be, I think, at least just for this one movie.
Yeah, I agree, and it's almost like if anything, SAG should be happy about this because I'm sure there are technologies that Marvel could use to just take everything they've gotten over 20 something films and recreate these performances for these types of moments. But they're not going to. They're going to end up shelling out millions of dollars to get the real thing if that's what they want to do.
Well, I would imagine exactly what you're saying has something to do with some of the negotiations that are ongoing right now. So yeah, that's an interesting topic. Another piece of news, this one not quite as fun and positive, regarding Blade, which might be the most troubled, Marvel project in production right now, or on hold from production, I suppose, because nothing's in production right now. But yeah, things supposedly,
Technically, there are some wavered independent
yeah,
films.
I guess. Oh, okay, yeah, that too. But I
Not
meant
at Marvel, yes.
right. But supposedly things got so bad on the set of Blade, and with the constant rewrites and change of directors, that the story changed so much. It got to the point where, and quoting Variety here, that the narrative was it was a story led by women, and Blade was the fourth lead. Or led by women and filled with life lessons, I think is what they said in the Variety story. And Blade was relegated to the fourth lead. And it got to the point where Mahershala Ali almost walked off the project. And I guess Kevin Feige kind of stepped in and brought everything back together. So, yeah, things not looking great for Blade right now. But they have, gone in a different direction since, I guess, that troubled script, and are kind of getting back to basics. One of the things they actually reported too was that they want to make this movie for a budget of under 100 million, which sounds like, okay, that's still $100 million movie, but when you're talking about a Marvel film, that's a fairly low
A
budget.
third.
Yeah, exactly. They also, in that story too, they talked about She-Hulk episodes being $25 million a pop. So there you go. But yeah, I would love to see that. I think Blade is the kind of movie that you could do for that lower budget. Get more practical, less CGI. Make it that dark, gritty movie that Blade should be, and I think that could really work. So that's interesting. Hopefully, Mahershala Ali is on now and not trying to walk off this project anymore, because I think he is the driving factor of that movie.
Yeah.
Real quick, a bit of news we got outside of that Variety article. There's one more piece I want to come back to later, but we got a new creative team for Daredevil Born Again. The new writer, Dario Scardapane, I think. He worked on Netflix Punisher series, so I like that. I like his involvement in this Daredevil series. And then directors Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead took over to direct the remaining episodes. Remember a while back we talked about how they screened a few episodes and Daredevil didn't show up in costume until the 4th episode, and it was a whole thing. And so they scrapped a whole bunch of it. So now Benson and Moorhead, who directed a bunch of episodes of, or actually I think the whole first season of Loki. So I like that. I like the talent they've brought in for this creative team here.
Yeah, I've definitely seen those names in the credits for Loki this season, probably because they're producers or something on it.
Yeah, I believe they're on as executive producers still. And then the last piece of news from that Variety article was just a little bit of that doom and gloom of the tracking for the Marvels is not looking so great. $75 to $80 million is what they're looking at for this opening weekend, which would be the lowest for Marvel Studios since Eternals. And I was interested, obviously there is the, not to get into it too much, but there's the political side of things, and people are just going to boycott this movie just for reasons. So I wanted to look back to see what Captain Marvel opened at, and that was around 150 million. So that is still a fairly big drop off from that. Now, Captain Marvel had the benefit of being sandwiched between Infinity War and Endgame. So that was like peak excitement for the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
And you knew it was going to be a key piece in what was going to happen in Endgame.
Right. So, it's tough to compare. A lot of it ends up looking like apples and oranges. But yeah, as far as an MCU movie goes, the opening weekend of even 80 million is not ideal. So we'll see how that goes. I do have to buy my ticket still. So, let's bump that number up a little bit.
It's Captain Marvel, but you're sharing billing with 2 characters from Disney Plus series.
That's true.
One of them who is from a popular series, but is far from being the star of said series. And the other one who is the star of the series, but I mean, I don't know the metrics on it, but I don't think it's one of the most popular of the series so far.
Yeah. No, I would, and that is going to be a factor in things going forward. When Moon Knight shows up in a movie and
orders a steak and breaks your heart.
So yeah, that's
I just totally derailed you with that joke.
Yeah, just a little bit. The other piece of news revolving around the Marvels, we just today got the release of the Marvels theme, I guess the main theme from the score from the film.
So it's not Intergalactic by the Beastie Boys?
It is not, as much as I would like it to be. No, have you listened to it, by the way, the new theme?
Dude, so we have a new team member on Laughing Place today, so I've been training them while doing some other stuff. So I have seen news go by, but I have not really had a chance to dive into it.
Well, I'll just say it's not what I expected. It does have like small elements of the Captain Marvel theme, but it is very different. So I enjoyed it. And it is also from composer Laura Cartman, who is just a delightful person. I got to speak to her at San Diego Comic-Con. You can read that interview on laughingplace.com. So yeah, I just really enjoy her work. So you can check that out. It is streaming confirmed on Apple Music for sure. I would assume Spotify and all of those other services as well. Last bit of news, and we already mentioned you didn't get a chance to watch it, but a trailer has been released for Echo, and there's been some changes to Echo. We kind of knew it was getting delayed already. It was originally set, well, not originally, but it was most recently set for a November release. Now it has been moved to January 10th. All 5 episodes are going to drop on Disney Plus and Hulu at the same time. And it's the first Marvel Studios, I guess we'll say, TVMA series. And the trailer reflects that. I was caught off guard by this trailer. It looks good. But more than anything, I'm excited for the doors this opens because, we have Deadpool coming out. We have Blade. You've got more Moon Knight coming in the future at some point. So I like Marvel showing a willingness to get into this darker side of things here. It doesn't look like a Disney Plus series. And so I was surprised to see they're dropping it on Hulu too. That's interesting.
Well, it definitely looks.
Yeah, it looks like more of a Hulu series. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, by then, so Disney has announced they are picking up that last third from Comcast. We kind of have no valuation, but anyway. And by the end of the year, they're supposed to add the Hulu tile into Disney Plus in the United States. So the two services will be far more integrated by then. Eventually, presumably, you'll just see even further where Hulu is just a part of Disney Plus. So the January launch date kind of lends itself to that and a further integration of Hulu and Disney Plus. So that's also kind of interesting to me.
Well, I have so many questions about how that's going to work, but that would be a much longer discussion that we don't have time for on this podcast. We do have a comment from Krishna. Says the dropping all the episodes at once is a sign that no Echo will bomb in the ratings. I mean, that has been sort of the public sentiment, is that it shows a lack of confidence from Marvel. This trailer, though, kind of, I think, from the buzz I've seen on Twitter or X or whatever, it has been very positive regarding this trailer. So I am very interested to see how this goes.
Yeah, I think that sentiment is kind of shifting. Like, yeah, with Muppets, whatever, it was kind of like, oh, that can't be good that they are dropping them all at once. But I think they're just experimenting. And if they see it's 5 episodes, and if they knew that it was going to be a grittier sort of a show, I mean, like we've said all along, Netflix does bingeable stuff. And Disney Plus has been, to their credit, experimenting with these different launch times. That's gone really well. So maybe this bingeable model will work. So I don't necessarily see it being a negative thing, at least not anymore. But I totally would have agreed with you a few months ago.
Yeah, no, I agree there actually too, because it might also be a way to avoid any possible backlash of, something. So not that it looks incredible. It's not the Netflix shows. It's not Daredevil and Punisher and that. But it's definitely not a Disney Plus like your typical Disney Plus content. And if they were to get, release these episodes weekly and hear the feedback on a weekly basis, that might not be ideal. But dropping it all at once, you could kind of avoid that a little bit as well. So, all right, I think that's it for our news. Like I said, there was a lot for us to catch up on there, but let's jump into this 5th episode of Loki.
Hopefully the person in the green room has seen it. Okay.
Yes. So you're not worried about spoilers, but we are going to put up if I can find the banner.
I got it.
Okay. All right. Kyle's got it. We are going to put up the banner for Loki spoilers. As long as this banner is up, we are going to be discussing spoilers from this week's episode of Loki. If you haven't watched it yet, go watch it. What are you doing? And if you are just listening to the audio, you're not seeing the banner anyway, and I would hope you've already watched it. 5th episode titled Science Fiction.
Double feature.
Yeah, science/fiction. Overall thoughts.
So I don't 100% remember what we said last week, but I feel like we get partial credit for guessing how this would kind of go. Didn't we talk about seeing people in there?
I think we did, yes. I will say we were both very wrong on where this episode would open.
Yes.
I said it would open with Renslayer in the Void. You said it would open in 2008 with Tony Stark in the Fundy, which I still love your idea. But I will say there was a mid-season trailer for Loki,
which I purposely did not watch.
Okay, smart, because it showed a lot of what we saw in this episode. But we are going to see Renslayer at some point. So I'm giving myself partial credit for that.
But no, I thought it was a really interesting episode. It was definitely one of those where you just kind of, like we've talked about all along, like don't think too much about it. I like that Loki is almost made, I promise this will make sense, is like almost like a tagline at this point. And that could be the tagline for the show, honestly. I like, if you just let it wash over you, I think it's cool. I like the visuals. It's kind of haunting the way that they do those things, and it was really interesting. It was I don't know, it was really fun to see other sides of these. Siri apparently thought I said something to her, but no, it was really cool to see other versions of these characters too, and get to see what the actors do with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I keep saying this, but this was incredibly well acted. I thought this was a lot of, this episode, it didn't a whole lot didn't really happen. Like it was more so about character development and seeing these characters' lives outside of the TVA and sort of just giving you a different angle on the whole show, really. But yeah, it was definitely a very different episode, and it was fun to see Loki sort of in this dynamic. I love the time travel, twists and turns, and watching and being like, oh, well, if this happens, then they could do this. And, so when he's going through the TVA and he sees himself and says hello, but then time slips away and then eventually swaps places, and then you see himself run in to see himself. Yeah, that all of that was really exciting. It didn't really amount to anything big in the moment, but it's cool to see that sort of thing. And it makes me feel like there's some sort of big, crazy twist coming. I don't know that will be the case, and I don't want to get my hopes up for it, but I kind of am struggling with that. I hope we do get, some sort of big, exciting moment in this finale, which it's definitely set up for, because
well, I mean, I think jumping way ahead, Loki being able to slip where, like, basically time travel anytime in space, be his own temp pad, seems like it has a lot of potential.
Yeah,
for anything they want to do.
And all in the game points out. So Loki now has a new OP superpower.
Yeah, seriously.
That was convenient for the plot. I'd say yes and no, because right now he does, but as soon as they get the TVA and the timelines under control, he won't be time slipping anymore. So he won't be able to. It's not just a permanent thing where Loki is going to time slip everywhere and basically just become, unless Loki is becoming He Who Remains, and that's the plot twist that we get to here. That would be interesting. But let's sort of, I mean, we touched on sort of the basic arc of this episode, but basically it's Loki going to each. I wasn't sure if they're all, because it all just says branch timeline. I guess they're all on the same timeline, because they do just kind of jump around to time. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's a good question. I hadn't thought too much about that, because I assume that they're using the time door to all get to one place. So I guess they could be on different timelines, but then I'll just join on alternate OB's timeline.
Yeah,
I guess that's possible.
Yeah, well, so we see Casey is a prisoner escaping from Alcatraz. OB is a science fiction writer / scientist, because he just got his PhD just to keep the lights on. B-15 is a doctor, and Mobius, as perfect as it could possibly be, is a jet ski salesman. So I love that. I also have to mention Loki showing up at the personal watercraft dealership, and popping up in front of the wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man, but kind of like the time slipping just kind of like mirrored the movements of it. I went back and watched that like 3 times. Fantastic.
Meanwhile, my wife was very, very excited that Dawn, who is Mobius, was from Cleveland, Ohio, because that's where she's from.
Yeah, what a lame name to go from Mobius to Dawn. Sorry, all Dawns out there listening.
But I'm glad you enjoyed I was a little bit, we were delayed because we were still making dinner when the episode debuted, but I was sending you my spoilers without context. The first one was wacky waving inflatable tube man.
Yeah.
We're passing the savings on to you.
We can go into a whole, should we just take a break here and just drop an Al Harrington in here?
Yes.
There was, it was all fun. Like it was fun just seeing the characters in their other lives, but for Mobius, that held a lot of weight, actually. If you think back to the previous episodes where, he's talking about how the TVA is the only life he's ever known, and he doesn't want to go back and see if it's something good and then realize what he's missing out on. Turns out he's a single dad with 2 sons. So it's a very different life. Now his life looked a little bit chaotic, and his son seemed to like to set things on fire. But so there was, it wasn't all great, but yeah, there's definitely an emotional component to seeing Mobius, his real life on the timeline, and that comes back into play later on when Loki is talking to Sylvie. I did think it was an interesting, ironic sort of twist of fate here, that this Loki, remember, this isn't Loki from Endgame or I guess Infinity War and Ragnarok and all that. This is Loki from Avengers. So last thing he did on his timeline is lose to the Avengers. and now he is at a point where he has to assemble his team to stop the big bad. And so he's now responsible for assembling 2 super teams, more or less. So yeah, I just thought that was a fun sort of story or plot device for Loki. The last member he has to get is Sylvie. And so he goes and meets her, who once again just happily working at a McDonald's. I guess is this like McDonald's propaganda? Is this their recruiting
I
film?
mean, they definitely they had a sauce tie-in.
That's true, yeah. But now
of.
they're trying to recruit everyone to come work for McDonald's with
Like, it's
Loki.
great. You can just go to the record store at night after you get off your shift, and everything's great.
She does come out with a bag of McDonald's, and then we watch it sort of disappear. I should mention too, earlier we saw Loki at the TVA, and the TVA disappeared, very much like Victor Timely did when he was
The silly string, like when you were playing with your webboard.
Yes, with the Hasbro unboxing video, which you can check out on the Laughing Place YouTube channel. I was going to say, spaghetti.
Oh, there is a lot of, I should also say, lots of, we were talking about the convenience of him being able to, control his time slipping, but, sees B-15 for 3 seconds, but then I guess to have like a perfect conversation with OB until he ends at the very last second, goes away. Right. It's like, okay, I'm sure.
Whatever power that was controlling it was just giving him exactly what he needed in the moment. So.
That they knew the beats.
Right. So we see the bag of McDonald's kind of float away into the spaghetti ether. And then
spaghetti ether, that's canon.
Exactly. And then Loki shows up. They go to a bar, and before we even get into their conversation at the bar, we see a Zaniac arcade game, which is fantastic.
Just the longest shot on the Zaniac game, too.
And had Brad Wolf's voice, too, to the point where the subtitles even actually showed, Brad Wolf and then the line from Zaniac. So pretty cool that his life is working out on this timeline. I like that they threw that in there. But then we get this really heavy conversation in an episode that is, I mean, actually very well balanced in terms of it's very light and fun, but also exactly. It's light and fun, and there's a lot of really funny moments, especially with OB. He's hilarious in this episode, but there's also this, this emotionality to it that you're feeling the weight of what all these characters are going through. And so Loki, and this story has been brewing, right, for like throughout this entire season, is Loki's fighting this, to him, inevitability that there's this threat coming of He Who Remains and all of his variants. There's no evidence of that, right? It's all just what He Who Remains told them in the season finale. So there's no threat there right now, but Loki is fighting so hard to keep this all together. And then we find out it's really just a personal, like, he doesn't want to be alone. He wants his friends. He wants them to stay together. So that's why he wants the TVA. And so that was a really well done. And Tom Hiddleston and Sophia DiMartino working off of each other perfectly all season long. This scene was one of their best. Really, really strong, powerful moment between those two characters there. And
the bartender compliments her on her order of 2 bourbons. Like, right. Wow, yeah, really dug deep for that.
How did you come up with that one, Sylvie? I got a lot of Infinity War vibes in this episode too, as we're watching characters just kind of disintegrate into thin air.
I was waiting for I don't feel so good.
Yeah, something like that. None of their reactions were quite as good as Peter Parker or even like Groot or any of the characters in Infinity War, but it was still cool to kind of feel like that movie as you're watching all of the characters disappear. I want to talk about too real quick the record store scene where Sylvie goes and sits down and listens to this record. She has this friendly relationship with the cashier there. And then that whole timeline just starts to disintegrate and everything disappears around her. And she's listening to Oh Sweet Nothing by the Velvet Underground, which I had to pause and look at the record label there. I thought that was a really cool scene, really well done. And just, perfect song choice, I guess, where she has her life finally, and now it's just sweet nothing.
Yeah, no, that scene was like, I don't know if it was creepy exactly, but it's
unsettling. I
Yeah,
think.
it's unsettling and like pretty in a way.
Yeah, it really
And
was.
yeah, I was waiting for him to yell her name, and he did at the last second, and I enjoyed that. And luckily, she could hear him over the headphones. But yeah, it was just a really cool scene. It's like really stuck with me since I watched it last night.
I will say there was a moment too that was a little bit dizzying as you're kind of like focused on the record and it's turning from like overhead. It was like reminded me of that Black Panther scene when they're upside down and turning the camera as you focus in on Killmonger on the throne. But yeah, we then get to that final scene where Loki does figure out that he can control the time slipping, and there was this whole thing about OB saying that science is about what and how, right? What and how, and science fiction is about why, I think is what it was.
That's
and Loki says it's not about any of that, it's about who, and having them all together allows him to that would be quite a crossover. But having them all together allows him to control the time slipping, and he says I can control the narrative, or I can change the narrative, something like that. And then he jumps back to being there with OB at the temporal loom. I would assume to just before Timely goes out into the radiation. I'm not sure exactly what moment they went back to there, but we'll find out next week for sure. And then you mentioned this before we recorded here. This was such a tease. It felt so much like there was a post-credit scene coming.
Yeah, like I swear there was a good like few seconds of black before it went to more credits and got smaller.
Yeah, and I think I'd have to go back and check out all of the previous Disney Plus series, but I think the penultimate episode has always had a post-credit scene. I could be wrong about that. There might
I don't remember because there was a format to the first couple, and then there was not. But we were, while we were waiting for Loki to go up, we were watching a couple of episodes of WandaVision last night, and we're like, remember when everyone hated the "Please Stand By"? Like that was our worst enemy.
Right. Now it's the state of Georgia.
Georgia.
Yeah. So I definitely thought we were getting a post-credit scene that was just going to be Renslayer waking up in the void, seeing where she is now, maybe with the remaining Lokis in the void, like looking over her,
or at least a Miss Minutes.
Oh, that would have been interesting too. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I guess she could get there. I don't know.
She can do anything.
Oh, Leonard with a good question. Is Loki going to be the next Avengers leader? There is no one, right? Like there's no Iron Man or Captain America. There's no that one character that is standing out as the one that would take control. So yeah, I think that's a possibility. I would like to see him actually assemble the Avengers like on purpose this time.
Not by killing a guy and sending him to a ABC spinoff.
Right. Anything else on this episode before we move on?
No, I feel like we recapped it really quickly, but that's because it's, mostly just finding about these characters that probably aren't going to matter all that much for too much longer.
Yeah, no, it really was like I said, it was like character development. It was seeing these characters' other lives. And it wasn't a whole lot that happened in this episode.
So I think we get credit for saying that it was probably going to be a bit of a detour.
Yeah.
I think that's where we landed, saying like last week's really felt like a penultimate. And so that would kind of go. And I think this probably also really felt like, because it is a penultimate. Right. But I think we get credit for saying that it would probably go somewhere else and then come back to the matter at hand. And I think that's basically what's happening. So I'm really excited to see where it goes from here.
All right, we did it last week, so I mean, next week's finale, where do we start? What's the opening scene?
I mean, probably the same point, but you said you can go with your thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we're gonna see Renslayer in this episode. So does the episode open with her? Maybe do that before the title card, and then we come into the moment that Loki jumped into. That would be my guess. That's what I'm gonna go with, but. Yeah, we're going to jump right into the temporal loom at some point too. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly we get to that. All right. I think that's going to do it. The banner is coming down for any of you who actually, I will let you take the banner down, Kyle. For any of you who are still avoiding Loki spoilers, we are all good now. We are going to jump into our draft.
What if I told you we were putting a team together? Assemble.
What's happening? Did we time slip again? I can't hear you. Oh, there we go. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, it's just glitching all over the place on my end here, I think. So, sorry. Hopefully, for the audio listeners, that worked out perfectly. But yeah, we are going to be doing a ridiculous draft this week. We like to tie our drafts into whatever's going on. So, like last week with Halloween, we did the horror movie recast. Not really anything going on for us to draft this week. So.
Oh, really? You didn't purposely tie this into like last week's episode or the first episode?
I did not, but now that you mention that, sure. Yes, and we'll fix that in post in the audio show as well. But we are going to be joined first, before we get into the topic. Let me welcome our guest, the one and only Jeremiah.
What's up, boys?
I had a banner ready for you. I don't even need it. Look at me.
I mean, I guess it was a gift from Marvel. I had to raise my hand and yell and scream for it, but yeah.
That's not a gift. If you get something from a t-shirt cannon, I don't think you need to disclose that.
Don't call Brian Crosby a t-shirt cannon, okay?
No, that's just his arm. It's a t-shirt cannon.
That's like the 5th or 6th line on his resume. There's a lot of other jobs before that. Hey, Jeremiah. How are you?
Hi, guys. I'm good. You guys didn't mention anything about Slappy and the cliff and everything. What's going on? That recap wasn't what I thought it was going to be.
Are we talking Goosebumps? Because I will happily do that. I have not watched today's episode yet, so no spoilers.
Kyle, this is, we're going off the rails as it always is. How many episodes are Goosebumps supposed to be, Kyle? Do you know?
I thought it was 10.
It's 10, yeah. So we have 2 left after this, I think? Something like that?
I'm so glad I didn't know that it was 10, because I was really like, oh, it's over. That's great.
And you just asked.
Real quick, before we get into the draft, we have a question from All in the Game. Does the finale have any impact on the larger MCU storyline? I would expect it to. I mean, this feels like the most important of the Disney Plus series. So I would expect it to have a larger role going forward.
Yeah, Doctor Doom's going to appear and kill He Who Remains.
That's the direction they're going now. Oh, do we have the Loki spoilers banner back up? Okay.
I took it down again now.
All right. Okay, so let's get into this draft here, because we probably don't need to spend a whole lot of time explaining or actually drafting. We are going to be drafting Marvel characters you would not want to be stuck on an elevator with. As you know, you probably could have guessed from the episode title and the description there, but
that's how all podcasts work. They're like, hide the guest, don't talk to them until we introduce them. It's like you put it in the show title.
Right, exactly.
You got to draw the people in, and that's nobody cares about the Loki recap. It's all about the character stuck in an elevator.
Yes. I wonder who they would not want to be stuck on an elevator with. Does it match up with the characters I would not want to be stuck on an elevator with? So Jeremiah,
Loki wouldn't want to be on there with Coulson.
And vice versa, I think. We're drafting, by the way, Marvel characters, not MCU specific. It can be any Marvel character from any universe, whatever you want. Jeremiah, you've done this before. You know how this works. Do you want to pick first, second, or third?
First, because I'm pretty sure we all have at least one that we're all right on the same level with.
He was an embarrassingly late add to my list, but we'll see. We'll see if we're on the same page here. But so Kyle, that means I picked second this week, I believe, right?
I believe so.
That's what we're going with
for sure. But
that's what we're gonna go with. So Jeremiah, you are up. Who is the number one Marvel character you absolutely would not want to be stuck on an elevator with?
I will be very interested if either of you went this way or this specific way. Dracula. He is a Marvel character.
Wow.
Yep. I was like, You don't want to be stuck in the elevator with Dracula because you're toast. Well,
yeah, you're not wrong. I don't want to be stuck on the elevator with Dracula. Not at all on my radar for this draft.
Always a good when you go first and then be like, you guys might not have thought of this.
well, at first I was like, Morbius. No, just Dracula had his own comic. He wins.
There you go. Yeah, no, I mean you're not wrong. I don't want to be on an elevator with Dracula. By the way, we are saying
what kind of Dracula.
I don't need to know what kind of Dracula I am to know. We are talking about being stuck on an elevator, by the way, not just like you're in the elevator for 30 seconds going down a floor. This elevator is getting stuck and we are trapped in there. So, yeah, Dracula's a good pick. I don't want to be spending a whole lot of time next to him. My nightmare scenario for this, though, by the way, is a full-on Tower of Terror situation. I don't want that thing coming down. So, to me, the worst character is going to be pretty heavy and the elevator's not going to support this character. And B, probably going to have a pretty short temper. I'm going to take the Hulk.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah, that was the one that I thought
me on for all the characters nobody ever thinks of, apparently. So,
well, this was the one that I thought you were going with first, and then I said, yeah, he was a pretty embarrassingly late addition to my list because I had like 5 or 6 other names, and I was like, oh wait, the Hulk is the one you don't want to be trapped in a small confined space with that's dangling on a wire.
And to your point, neither do the other Avengers. That's
right,
the one we know they don't want to be on an elevator.
Yeah.
Confirmed.
Maximum occupancy has
stairs.
So yeah, there you go. I don't want to be trapped on an elevator with the Hulk. Kyle, you have back-to-back picks now.
I'm gonna go a similar direction as your pick, Mac. I'm gonna take The Thing.
Yeah, he was another one on my list, but for basically the same reasons. Just he doesn't have quite as short a temper. He does have a pretty short temper too, but the rage issue is not quite as well documented. But yeah, I don't think that elevator is going to support his weight for very long.
And then my next pick, I'm going to take Venom.
Yeah,
because I don't want to be eaten, and also because I don't want any of the pure symbiote to get on me.
Oh, see, I might want that. I think if the Venom symbiote was real, I'd be like, just let's do it. I don't even care anymore. But
wow,
dark. We'll talk about it. But no, and we'll probably rule this character out now because it would pretty much be the same thing. But I had Carnage on my list for the same reasons.
Yeah, I think Venom's the more well-known.
Sure,
so
probably going to help you better in the
poll. On there, or
yeah, Agony, Phage. We could have gone with a lot of symbiote creatures, but the Thing and Venom, that's a solid one too. I do not want to be the Thing. No problem getting on the elevator with the Thing and then just traveling down, but being stuck there, I'm going to be nervous the entire time. Okay, I'm back up now, and my next 2 on my list are both like sort of they're a reason of the Hulk. Like it's the short temper or it's the weight issue of the whole elevator coming down. So I'm going to go in a different direction. But do I want to go with one that's going to help me in the polls, or do I want to go with one that I think is kind of funny? We'll go polls.
You went for the eternal question of these things.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, I don't want to be stuck next to J. Jonah Jameson for an extended period of time. I think
particularly the latest series.
Yeah. Well, that, and I've been playing. I didn't mention this too. I meant to talk about this at the top, but I have been playing Marvel Spider-Man 2 on PlayStation 5. Incredible! It's a fantastic game, and the J. Jonah Jameson in the game, so annoying. I would not want to deal with this guy for an extended.
You gotta get me out of this elevator. I need more photos of Spider-Man.
Does he have the cigar with him? Like,
you know what?
Light up?
Actually, the only minor spoilers for Spider-Man 2. The only time I've seen him in the game is when you have to swing him to a hospital. So no cigar in his mouth in that moment. But yeah, J. Jonah Jameson, not a character I want to spend a whole lot of time with in a confined space. Jeremiah, we are back to you. You have to follow up Dracula now. Where do you go from here?
Oh, this is easy. Like, this was actually my first choice Dracula was like, oh, people may have thought of that. Apparently not. And I'm guessing that this one is off your radar because when both of you started with I was like, the Blob.
Yeah, okay, the Blob
What
was
is Blob?
Like, short temper, he's a villain. And he has like immense mass. Okay, both are bad.
You know, we should have got Doobie for this just to see if he would have taken Doorman, which would actually be something you would want.
Exactly. I had that exact thought. I was like, Doorman is probably, this is the one situation where you, like, this is the worst draft to pick Doorman. Would have been interesting to see if he did that. All right, Jeremiah, Dracula, and the Blob. Blob was on my list, by the way. He was one that I was considering. Who's your next pick now?
I had two different ways, and they're both because of the weight of the elevator. But Colossus, I'll just go with him. Like,
okay, he can at least come out of his metal form, but
but you'd be cramped in there no matter what. He's still 8 feet to 10 feet tall and weighs a few 100 pounds at least.
Yeah, no, he's a very large guy. And if you're building a team, if you're stuck in the elevator with all of these guys, you are already out of space. So.
Oh, yeah. No. The Blob alone is like, you're just kind of like in that corner, just like, please get off on the next floor.
Okay, so I've got the Hulk. I've got J. Jonah Jameson. The other thing that, you don't want to be stuck. Listen, this is post-COVID life, right? You don't want to be stuck on an elevator with somebody who's sick. I had a hard time finding somebody specifically, a Marvel character who's just sick, but I'm going to go with Typhoid Mary. I think that's probably a character you don't want to be spending too much time close to. Also known as Bloody Mary. She's not a nice person to begin with, but just the name Typhoid Mary, you probably don't want to be stuck on an elevator with her. Also, the wife of the Kingpin, too. So, again, it kind of lends some credibility to the idea that she's not a very nice person.
That's fair.
All right. So, Kyle, we are back to you. You went with The Thing and Venom, back-to-back picks to wrap up your draft here.
All right. Next, I'm going to take Goose. Both because it seems like a bit of a ticking time bomb. And also, I'm allergic to cats, so I don't know if I'm also allergic to Florkins. Yeah, but I don't want to find out.
Yeah, no, that's good. I had as sort of a last resort pick, I had Beast on there because I don't know if I'm allergic. I'm not sure. Yeah, Goose is a good one. Probably not escaping that situation.
And then last, I'm going to kind of bookend my picks here a little bit. And hopefully people don't confuse the two, but I'm going to choose Man-Thing because he seems like he smells. Being kind of a swamp creature, sometimes referred to as Swamp Thing, even though it's not him. Doesn't seem like a good time. Yeah, it's just like being surrounded by Florida.
In an elevator. Yeah, that does not sound pleasant.
Florida in an elevator is not pleasant at all.
Yeah, no, Man-Thing, that would not be a good time for sure. All right, I'm going to my last pick here, I have the Hulk, J. Jonah Jameson, and Typhoid Mary. I'm going to kind of build off of that last pick I just made, and I'm going to go with Radioactive Man. Don't want to be spending a whole lot of time close to
Fallout Boy.
Yeah, he's both been a hero and a villain, so he has sort of that bad guy energy too, and then just energy of a different kind too. That's not going to be pleasant to stand next to for a long time. So Radioactive Man is my fourth pick. I'm hoping just the names Typhoid Mary and Radioactive Man hit well in these polls here, because that might work out well for me. Jeremiah, Dracula, the Blob, Colossus. One last pick here.
So one of the most annoying things for me in an elevator are people that just complain and won't shut up. Wolverine. Could you imagine being stuck in an elevator and him complaining the entire time? Like, just and again, talking about smells. Wolverine, I mean, not like, current Wolverine. We're talking like old school Wolverine. He probably didn't smell that great.
See, I do think Wolverine probably isn't going to say much. He's the kind of guy that keeps to himself. But the entire time you're going to be terrified to do anything to make him angry.
You make one noise.
Plus, listen, you're stuck on an elevator. If maybe you're the one that smells, and Wolverine is gonna find that out. He can sniff things out. So then you're just gonna be self-conscious the entire time.
Well, since his enhanced smell ability, yes, no matter what, you'll smell.
That's true. That's very true. Okay, so I'll go through our final teams real quick before we go with any honorable mentions here. Jeremiah has Dracula, the Blob, Colossus, and Wolverine. Very X-Men heavy team there. I have the Hulk, J. Jonah Jameson, Typhoid Mary, and Radioactive Man. Kyle has the Thing, Venom, Goose, and Man Thing. I can't believe we had the same thought of potentially being allergic to a character. That's fantastic. Jeremiah, did you have any other honorable mentions?
Juggernaut was one.
Juggernaut was the next one on my list. Yeah.
I don't think I had Venom. Venom was like really my first choice, but I was gonna wait and see where that went. But yeah, I think Juggernaut would be, if there was one other person that I really just didn't want to, it'd be Juggernaut.
Yeah, I remember writing something a few years back and looking up, and the Juggernaut weighs something like 950 pounds. I don't think the elevator is supporting that, so I think they're gonna have a problem there. Kyle, what about you? Any other names on your list?
Thanos, always a good pick.
Yeah.
Moon Knight, in case he switches personalities.
Oh, that's
in the middle
interesting.
of the episode. Mjolnir, in case the elevator is not worthy.
I just had that thought too.
And then my last one was one Becca recommended. She said Spiral.
Hasn't she drafted Spiral in the past?
Maybe. Just all those arms freak her out.
I had the thought of Mjolnir too, just because the entire time I'm just gonna be like, don't bother trying to pick it up. You can't do it. Just don't pick it up.
And what happens if you do try to pick it up? Like, wouldn't that just gravity? I mean, I know that we've said the elevator moves with it,
right.
But if you try to pick it up and it fights against you.
Well, let me ask you this. What happens if you do pick it up? Then all of a sudden you're worthy of being Thor. Try living up to that. I had a few other names on my list. I had, like I said, after the Hulk, I had two that were sort of, one was each element of the Hulk. So it was Juggernaut for the weight, but also the Sentry for the temper issues.
I hate that guy.
Different Sentry. That was a Kree Sentry that was bothering you in whatever arcade game that was you were playing.
The Sentry. Sentries? Why would you do that?
I also had, you want to get into some deep cut characters, Jeremiah. I had Nitro on my list, whose power is to explode.
That's an American Gladiator. That's not.
I also would not want to be stuck on an elevator with any American Gladiator. I'll say that.
No, wasn't Nitro Running Man?
Yes, right. Was that? I don't know. I don't know if I'm thinking of the right thing.
Yeah. Now I have to go look. Go on.
But Nitro's power is to explode. Not great for an elevator. Deadpool, probably going to be annoying on an elevator. And then I also had Groot. Listen, if you're going to get stuck and have a conversation, you probably want to be able to understand him. And if he's just saying, I am Groot over and over again, I'm not going to be able to enjoy that.
But again, he does have some abilities that might be able to get you out. So that's kind of the drawback.
That is true. Yeah. Oh, I did have one other funny one too, and that I think might have worked in the polls just based on the name, and that's Mr. Negative. I don't want to be hanging out with a guy named Mr. Negative.
Oh, I actually took him off my list so I didn't accidentally draft him. But I also thought Lockjaw for the size, but I'm like, but then he can transport you out.
Teleport you out. I like that you took him off so you didn't accidentally make that.
Way to think it through, Kyle.
Jeremiah, thank you for joining us for another ridiculous draft. Real quick, how are you liking Loki?
I'm enjoying it. This last episode, I was listening to you guys' recap, and you guys were hitting all the key points. I did kind of feel like this episode ran long, just because the early parts of it were like, okay, I get you guys need to build up some tension here with the emptiness, but let's go on. Casey as the escape from Alcatraz guy was the most random, and I was laughing at that the entire time. I did love Obi showing up. It's like 18 months. well, 19 months because I lost my job and my wife and everything. Right. Just like it's so perfect.
And then he just, so what's next? And like it just doesn't matter to him. But yeah, it's been great. And let's just a half hour on what do you think of Goosebumps so far?
I could easily at New York Comic Con, I went into Goosebumps, and I think I talked about this in one of the things. Like Goosebumps was not in my range. Like I knew of Goosebumps, but I never read any of the books. I never got to do the attraction at Disney MGM Studios. I never watched the old shows, and then went to a panel and then an after party at New York Comic Con. I was like, wow, this seems pretty cool. And then I did the deep dive into the first few episodes. And then each episode, I've just been like, Friday morning, got to watch it right away, which is rare for a non-Marvel or Star Wars. Right. I really hope that it does catch on.
Yeah, totally agree.
While you were talking, I hadn't watched the Echo trailer yet. And then when you guys, before you brought me on, I watched it. Wow, that definitely has some old Netflix Daredevil feel.
Yeah, right?
So that's great.
Yeah, it's definitely violent for a Disney Plus show. So, Kyle, I'm excited for you to go watch it and let me know what you think. Jeremiah, thanks again for joining us. And, we'll have you back as soon as we come up with another completely nonsensical draft that we can waste your time with.
I got to find somewhere to put Howard the Duck, so I'm good with that.
Right. I did consider him for this draft, too.
I thought about it also, but I would probably talk to him the entire time. And
right.
His stories. Can you imagine sitting there and hearing his stories above everything else?
Yeah, it would be pretty chaotic. But, all right. Thanks, Jeremiah.
Bye, guys.
All right. So that does it for another episode of the Zzzax of Live podcast. It was nice to get back to our regular format and not have to start off with the draft this time.
I still forgot to get a cameo, but other than that.
Yes, that's true. We are still missing how much.
I forgot. It's more just a bit busy, like I said. We'll bring it back next whatever we do. What show is next? I guess, is it not until January?
Ooh, yeah,
I guess would be.
It would be, right? Yeah,
we don't have. We're still waiting. I was talking to someone yesterday who was asking about that. I feel like that should be in the can at this point. They should probably just put it out there. I think it'd be a great thing after Loki.
Yeah, well, you would think though that we would have already heard a date if they were going to drop it this year at this point, because
I guess, but I don't feel like they make as much of a hubbub about that one.
That's true. But I mean, I don't know. It feels like any Marvel content they can possibly promote, they're probably going to want to do it. Plus, they also might be trying to spread things out a little bit more, not knowing how long the strike is going to go on and how much content they're going to actually have.
I know, but
I like that you're trying to be the optimist here, but I will go ahead and bring us back down.
Thanks.
Anything else before we wrap up? Again, we're not going to have an episode next week. We will be back probably early the following week with Loki, the finale. We'll be talking about the Marvels and maybe a little bit of a trip report because I'm going on a Disney cruise. I'm going on a Disney Wish again, so I'll experience the Worlds of Marvel restaurant and all the changes that have happened there. So talk about that a little bit too. Anything else, Kyle?
I'll give a quick plug. It's not related to Marvel at all, but this morning, Laughing Places had 2 Disney Lorcana card reveals. So if you're into that, you can go check that out. Kind of ties into what we were talking about last week with the Marvel and Wizards of the Coast, or Magic the Gathering specifically, that partnership. So yeah, you can go check that out.
Yeah, and I will also give a quick plug. This one is Marvel related, but I have a like I mentioned it earlier. We have a video on the Laughing Place YouTube channel right now. Unbox a whole bunch of stuff from Hasbro, and as you can see, have some new toys. So
that's awesome. I thought you were going to spray your webcam again, but this is better.
I don't keep that one in here anymore. I can't be trusted with it.
Well, you shouldn't be trusted. I wouldn't trust having magnetism near your computer, but you do you.
Hey, this is just anti-telepathic ability.
Oh, by the way, for people listening to this show, he's wearing a Magneto helmet.
That's right. This is a podcast. Yes, I have the Magneto Marvel Legends roleplay helmet that Hasbro sent to me. So thank you very much, Hasbro, for sending me some of these fun. It was a Halloween-based box. You can make all sorts of Halloween costumes with different toys. So you can check that out on the Laughing Place YouTube channel. And that's it. that's going to do it for us. We will be back, like I said, in roughly 10 days, we'll say. So thank you so much, and we will see you all real soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.